All right, shalom, family. Shalom, shalom. All listening to Yahuah. I wanted to pick up where I left off yesterday. The video kind of cut off abruptly. The phone heated up. But I wanted to really just continue this thought on, is your name written in the Lamb's Book of Life? Now, today, I wanted to kind of add an emphasis on what it is, because it's not just names that are written in this book. It's not just names. It's a record, right? This is a heavenly record that was accounted of way before Yahuah, also known as John, right? Prophesies about this in the Book of Revelation, where he talks about, the names that are written in the Lamb's Book of Life, which we discussed yesterday, belongs to Yahushua HaMashiach, because he is the Lamb for the house of Israel, right? He's our Pesach Lamb. So saying all this to say, today I want to go deeper, right? Today I want to go deeper. It's a couple scripts I didn't get to. I didn't get to hit that Exodus 31 or 32, whichever one it was. We'll hit that today. But I wanted to start off by posing a question. What is or what will be written about you in the heavenly tablets? Because the heavenly tablets end up becoming the Lamb's Book of Life. But here's a concept that I really want you to meditate on and I want you to think about, right? The heavenly tablets are just the records, period. But the Lamb's Book of Life is the record, or are the records, that Abba Yahuah accepts from the Lamb of those who the Lamb has covered and atoned for with his blood. You follow me? So the reason why it is the same thing, but it's a slight difference, is because when Abba Yahuah transfers the power to the Lamb and gives him the actual book, the names that are blotted out of that book are individuals who have records about them that have sin, that have iniquity, right? That keep them or prevent them from being in the Lamb's Book of Life. Therefore, their names are blotted out of the Lamb's Book of Life, and their names carry the records of what they've done against Yah. I know that's a deep concept, but that's just what it is. And I'm going to prove it today. Because again, I spoke briefly on this yesterday, but several individuals, not just Yahuah, had this revelation, right? Malachi had this revelation. Moshe had this revelation. Daniel, I know we hit Daniel yesterday, but Daniel had this revelation, right? Hanuk had this revelation. A lot of people, King Dawood had this revelation, right? So today I'm going to try to do this within 15, 20 minutes. I don't want this video to be too long. But again, you have to understand that on the heavenly tablets in general, before we even get to the deeper concept of the Lamb's Book of Life, on the heavenly tablets is the entire record of what you've done. You're under surveillance. Everything that you do, your thoughts, your intentions, right? How you deal with people, right? Yah considers all of this before the judgment. Now, again, because it's not just our names that are written on these heavenly tablets, it's our deeds, our endurance, and our choices, right? So what you got to understand about the heavenly books and tablets is that, again, these are records, right? Think about it. If man has enough sense to keep records, driving records, criminal records, right? Credit, they call it a credit report, but it's your credit record. You think y'all don't have a record? You think the heavens don't have a record of, or accounts of what you have done in this earth realm? No, it's absolutely accounts. But I want to prove this to you in the script, and I want to just talk about the blessing of the Lamb's book, because again, the Lamb blots out all of the negative things that you have done against Yah, and it's because of Yahushua HaMashiach, right? I know I elaborated on that yesterday, but today we're going to go deeper. So first thing I want you to do is go to Malachi chapter 3. Hallelujah. I'm going to hit a couple places here to just prove this point of what I'm talking about, right? So Malachi 3, I'm going to start at verse 16, right? And it says, and you got to understand, this is obviously the prophet Malachi prophesying about, various things regarding the house of Israel, things that Abba Yahuah is displeased with, things that Abba Yahuah is pleased with, right? But all of this is pointing to overall the house of Israel, Yah examining the house of Israel. But verse 16, it says, then they that feared Yahuah spoke often to one another. And I know we've read this script before, we've meditated on this verse before, but I want you to look at this verse in the context of what we're talking about, the heavenly records. Look at this. Then they that feared Yahuah spoke often one to another, and Yahuah hearkened and heard it. And a sefer, or a book of record, look at this, y'all, was written before him for them that what? Feared Yahuah and thought upon his name. Verse 17, and they shall be mine, says Yahuah of oath, in that day when I make up my jewels. Who are the jewels? That is the remnant. And I will spare them as a man spares his own son that serves him. So deep on so many metaphorical levels. But this, he talking about the Lamb's Book of Life. He's saying the people who have these records and these accounts written about them, these are the names that are found in the Lamb's Book of Life. No, you do not see the term Lamb's Book of Life until we get into the Brit Hadashah. But what I'm trying to explain to you and show you is that the concept is fully here. Whew. In that day when I make up my jewels and I will spare them. That is what the Lamb's Book of Life is about. Is the individuals that have been spared because they have been covered by the blood of the Lamb. As a man spares his own son that serves him. Metaphorical, because Yahusha is his son. Right? Then you shall return and discern between the righteous and the wicked, and between him that serves Elohim and him that serves him not. Why did I bring this out? I brought this out to show you, like I said, even Malachi had a concept or understanding of this idea that there are records in the Shamayim that are kept regarding the good that is done and the bad that is done. Right? Now, again, heaven keeps detailed records, right? Not just names, but deeds. That's the point, right? The Book of Remembrance records the righteous conversations and thoughts, not just your physical acts. So this is what I want you to look at in this verse 16, where it says, then they that feared Yahuah spoke often to one another, and Yahuah hearkened and heard it. Right? Then it says, and a sefer of record was written before him for them that feared Yahuah and that thought upon his name. See, your interaction with your brother and your sister is really what Yahuah is looking at. I'm not saying that the other works he's not looking at. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that this says for sure, they that fear Yah and spoke often to one another. Like, what is your interaction with your brother or your sister? And this is really the depth of what it is. This is why intentions do matter, because I was having an excellent dialogue with my Isha about some of this earlier today, before I left. And Yah, being the judge that he is, she made a very good point. She's like, yo, there's no person to sway Yah's judgment. No one sways the judgment of Yah when it comes to him looking upon your case and determining whether or not you should be thrown into the lake of fire or whether you should go into the kingdom. Whether he should pardon your sin, whether he should, overlook what you have done. But one of the key factors is, what are your intentions? Do you actually have a desire for your brother or your sister to be redeemed out of the sin that they did? And that's the problem with a lot of these Hebrews. She was talking about how a lot of Hebrews, especially in this awakening, man, they just bang on each other. They point out the bad, but there's no solution. They always have something negative to say, but they don't have no solution. And the reason why there's no solution, there's no remedy, there's no a plan of action of how this person can be redeemed from that sin, is because they don't really want that person to be redeemed out of that sin. They want that person to burn. They want that person to be judged and to be humiliated and to be chastised. And ultimately, they don't desire that person's good. And that's, when I tell you, that's so wicked. And that's one of the main things Yah is looking at. And this proves it, right? Yah is hearkening to your interpersonal dialogues. And he's looking at your heart posture, right? When you talking to your brothers and your sisters, and when y'all having meetings, and when y'all have these thoughts, and when people saying this and that, and y'all's looking at the whole thing. He's watching, he's hearkening, he's listening. And if your intention is not really for your good, for the good of your brother or your sister, right, it's going to be exposed. And those are the things that Yah is really heavily looking upon, right? He's heavily looking upon that. He wants to see, are you willing to sacrifice your own pride and your own understanding for the betterment of your brother or your sister? Come on, man. Nothing escapes Yah's record, even your thoughts. And this is why you cannot stop the internal work. You cannot stop the shadow work, right? We call it light work, but it's the same thing. You can't stop searching the depths of your heart to see, man, why was my interaction with my brother weird like that? Why does my sister feel a certain type of way? Why does my Isha, why does my Ash, like, what's going on internally with me, Yah? I need to be improved. My heart posture needs to be better. My intentions need to be pure like yours. Why don't I have a desire for my brother's sin to be blotted out? These are the things y'all was looking at. So again, what you say, what you do, and how you endure. All of these things are written. Remember, you are under surveillance, right? Now, Hanuk mentions it. I'm not going to go to Hanuk, but if you go to Hanuk 81, right, the idea of the heavenly tablets was really first kind of brought out through him, right? So he was technically one of the first ones to be given this revelation, right? And if you go to, and again, I'm referencing certain places because I don't want this video to be too long, but there are other places that I do want to hit. According to Hebrews 6:10, it says, Yah remembers our good works. So if he obviously remembers our good works, then obviously this goes back to show that there's a record recording and keeping this, right? But sins are also recorded, which watch this, can only be blotted out if your name is written in that Lamb's Book of Life. Now, real quick, I want to hit two other places before I end this video, and we're doing really good on time. Go to Exodus 31. Hallelujah. Shemoth, Exodus 31, real quick. I'm trying to make this video in under 20 minutes if possible. Exodus 31. I'm going to start at verse 31, right? Or no, 32. My bad, y'all. Exodus 32, and I'm going to start at verse, matter of fact, I'm going to start at verse 30, right? So this is after the whole golden calf was made and the idolatry thing was happening, the whole weird thing with Aaron and them worshiping the golden calf, and, you know, Yahuah telling every man, or Yahuah through Moshe telling every man, the Levites, gird up your sword, and, you know, boom. Who was on Yahuah's side? You know, making a long story short, about 3,000 people died because they was fooling. They was in idolatry right after the commandment was given, right? So look at this. If you go to verse 30, it says, and it came to pass on the morrow, so on the next day after all of this happened, that Moshe said unto the people, you have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up unto Yahuah, El Yahuah, perchance I shall make an atonement for your sin. Foreshadow of Yahushua HaMashiach and his blood, right? Even though you already know they've already kept the Pesach is already being kept, so that's already in motion, right? Of Abba Yahuah having this idea of atonement for sin through the blood of the Lamb. But look at this, verse 31. And Moshe returned unto El Yahuah and said, oh, this people have sinned a great sin, and have made them Elohai of gold. 32. Yet now, if you will forgive their sin, and if not, watch this, blot me, I pray you, out of your sefer which you have written. Ooh, that's powerful. For one, that shows Moshe's heart. He's saying, listen, I am willing to be blotted out of your book of life in order for them to remain in your book of life. Proving that Moshe had divine revelation of Yah having a heavenly record, a book. Woo! It's powerful, y'all. But this shows that even he had the heart posture of Hamashiach. that I will be willing to die on behalf of my brothers and my sisters, on behalf of your people. This the heart posture Yah wants you to have, even in your dialogue. And this is on a deep level of, straight up idolatry, but people don't even have or I don't want to say audacity, but the boldness to even talk to their brother or their sister about petty stuff. People out here sending people to hell for eating sea moss. People out here going in on people marriages and going in on people financial situation, going in on people health, going in on people's relationship with their own children, right? And not having solutions because they don't really have the desire to help this person according to the ways of Yahuah to come out of whatever hole you perceive them to be in. But he's willing to have his name blotted out of the sefer for some people in idolatry. That's a very, very, very tove heart posture from Moshe right here. And I'm just showing you this to show you, not only is this, revelation that he had of the sefer of Yah's book, but this is also revelation and insight to the fact that, this is why Yah loved Moshe the way that he did, even though he still didn't make it into the land, but he still loved the fact that Moshe had this type of heart posture towards Israel. And this is what Yah's looking at when he's considering, whether or not your name should be blotted out of his book and written in the Lamb's book of life, right? So look at this, verse 33. And Yahuah said unto Moshe, so this is Yah's response to Moshe. And Yah said unto Moshe, whosoever has sinned against me, him will I blot out of my sefer. So he's like, hallelujah. That's good. That's your heart posture, but I'm going to deal with the individual. Therefore now go and lead the people to the place of which I have spoken unto you. And behold, my Malachi shall go before you. Nevertheless, in the day when I visit, I will visit their sin upon them. And Yahuah plagued the people because they made the calf which Aharon had made. Just an example to show you that, this idea of a record, a book of life, and the idea of one being blotted out, right? The record of what happened, it's written. Hallelujah. So again, the idea of being blotted out means you will be erased. And you don't want to be blotted out of Yah's book. And that idea, and the reason you're blotted out is because some sin that you've done. But the way that your sin can be blotted out is if your name and your accounts are now written in the Lamb's book of life. And again, in the Lamb's book of life, these are positive accounts. That's the concept I'm trying to get you to see, right? Even Dawood, not gonna go there, but in Psalm 56, he talks about names being blotted out of the book, right? So even Dawood had this revelation. But the last place I want to go to, because we're doing good on time, Revelation 14, right? And this is where it's all, this is the final, this is the final warning. No, this is the final word, right? Of why all of this matters, why all of this is relevant and what it is, right? Revelation 14, still kind of dealing with that same thought of what went forth in Revelation 13, the Kodeshim, right? So Revelation 14, verse 12, we're just going to read this one verse, right? After they're talking about the mark of the beast and whoever receives not his name. And now this is dealing with the remnant. Look at what it says. It says, here's the patience of the Kodeshim. Here are they that guard the commandments of Elohim and the faith of Yahusha. What you got to understand is that patience, it's really atonement. I know y'all like, what? Yeah, it's the Hebrew word, arak, aleph, resh, kaf. And its root goes back to, watch this, a man covered, whole, long, right? The idea of man's reproductive organs always being covered. But so that's the physical. The spiritual metaphor is to prolong, to lengthen, to delay, to draw out. This is the ability to prolong your belief in a difficult situation. And you can't talk about that without talking about endurance, because Hamashiach said, he who is saved is he who endures to the end. That's the Hebrew word kawah, quoth, wah, hey. And it's the idea of waiting. Hebraically collecting, the gathering of accord. But look at this, y'all. The etymological Hebrew dictionary says, watch this, to gather, to act, to strive to a particular goal. Gathering, striving, hoping, yearning. This is what Yah showed me, the Ruach showed me, dropped this on me like a light bulb. It's striving with someone in love. That's really what he's looking at. And when you look at, how Shaul says the greatest gift is in love, Hamashiach, the greatest commandment, love Yah and love your neighbor as yourself. It's always going to go back to love. But if you are not striving with your brothers and your sisters in love, I'm trying to tell you that is not a characteristic of someone whose name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. You have to strive. That the names that are written in the Lamb's Book of Life, the Lamb's Book of Life, are individuals who are striving with each other in love, and they have each other's best interests at heart. This is what Abba Yahuah is looking and taking account of, and this is why Hamashiach was chosen to be the Lamb and the Lion and the King and the Master and all of these, the King of Kings, Master of all of these things. Why? Because he had this type of heart, and the individuals who are written in his book, they also possess this type of heart where they have the ability to strive with each other in love. That's the patience of the Kodeshim. That's the evidence that you truly have faith in Yahushua HaMashiach, because you don't just have faith that he's going to block you out, but you move like how he moves. You have a heart like how he has. You have endurance the way that he has. You have patience the way he has. You have love in your heart the way that he has for Yah's people. Oh, and by the way, my name is El Hanuk, Moray teacher seer here at Reset the Frequency. I thought I'd let y'all know. I do these words out of the abundance of my heart to really just encourage Yah's people, and to let you all know that our King is returning, and that what we read in this script, there's so much more of a deeper context than just keep the Torah, keep your wear your fringes, Ak. Wear your head wrap, sis, man. It's so much. It's a deeper intimacy. It's a deeper level of intimacy that you gotta have with the King, that you gotta have with Yah. That's ultimately going to change the way that you deal with others. And these are the things that Yah is looking at. So, my prayer is that all of the remnant, hallelujah, and all those who have an ear to hear, all the strangers, all the Japheth, whoever is willing to cleave and to humble themselves and forsake the ways of their forefathers, are able to be a part of this remnant and actually have their names written in the Lamb's Book of Life. I love you all. Shalom.